So it sees the VIN and you choose whether it's okay or not. iCarsoft only had 4. Here we've got probably about 10. Read data stream is going to be live information, special function, you've got adaptation, diagnosis routines, initial test oil condition. You can actually take the information from the old, launch will copy it and put the coding onto the new one. 2500 fault code is there. There it is, P2500, excellent. And then importantly, let's see if my iCarsoft also sees it now. Electronic accelerator, idle speed, engine at cold starts, and then warming up phase. The fourth one down of 23 items. Let's move on, 'cause it's time to move on. So off the back of the video I did for the launch Creader Elite version 2 for Mercedes, I got my iCarsoft today. And in fact, in here I've also got my launch, which is perfect because the two are pretty much exactly the same size. And I can keep them together. They also use the same cable, which is really handy as well, so just need the one cable to carry around. But it's easier for me just to show you rather than talk about it. So today I'm just going to do a comparison between the new launch Creader Elite version 2 and my little iCarsoft, which I've had for quite a few years now. And we'll talk about the differences, and I'll see if I can give you a little review at the end of what I think is the better one. So let's plug them in, have a look for a fault. I know that I've got some faults on this Mercedes. I'll use the iCarsoft first, I think, have a look to see what it says, and then I'll do the same test with the launch, plug it in, but let's just see what else this can do when it sees that same fault. So the difference is straight away is that this is not a touchscreen. You navigate using this little arrow round key here and the keys on the left and the right. And starting from the first menu, the diagnostic menu is where you're going to go in specifically for your car. Like the launch, you've also got an OBD2 check, which is more of a generic check. If I go into that now, it's going to run through the systems and it tells me at a glance if I've got any faults, which is quite handy. But it's only basic. If I go back, it's also got a service menu here. The service menu is pretty good, and in there you've got things like oil reset, electric parking brake if you have it, battery management system, etc. Recently, there's a little link below, I've done a video on how to do the ETC throttle reset. You've also got things like steering angle sensor and a DPF. So these are the service type of resets that you can do. But today I'm interested in comparing against the launch, so I'm going to go to the diagnostic, and obviously I'm going to choose my car. I've got various different cars on this, came with 10, and I chose which ones I wanted. So I'm going to go to Mercedes-Benz. This is just the software, so I just choose the latest one. You get free software updates all the time with iCarsoft, which I believe is also the same with the launch. Now we're going to choose the actual car. For me, it's at the bottom of the list. It's the SL230. Go into that. And then choose the year. And lastly, I'm going to choose the engine type, which I know is this one, 0.467. And you can get that information on the door VIN card, which is usually on the driver's side door. So these two scans here, the difference are, you've got Smart Scan being that is going to look for all the devices that this iCarsoft can talk to on your particular car. Manual Scan is where you go into it and choose individually, so it's a quicker scan. The Smart Scan can take maybe a couple of minutes to do, which I'm going to show you in a second. But if I just quickly go into Manual Scan, it's going to bring up the main modules, starting at the top, for example, engine control module, transmission control module. So if you believe you've got a problem with the ECM, the engine control module, you can go straight into it, so you don't have to run through everything like sensor-tonic brake control or the stability program, because that's not relative. So let's go into the first one, ECM, and it gives me these 4 menus. So I've got module information, which is going to be about the actual device itself. It's going to tell me the brand, software and year of manufacture. There we go. Control units, suppliers Bosch, Mercedes-Benz part number. And it's a handy little thing to have this, because it means that you don't have to take the actual unit off the vehicle. You can get it without having to take the panels off and find it, which is quite handy. So if I go back and I go down to view data, which is the last menu, this will give you some options here to have a look at live. So electronic accelerator, idle speed, for example, engine at cold starts, and then warming up phase. It's pretty handy having all this info here, and there's this is the fourth one down of 23 items on the engine control module. Check sensors adaptation, check self adaptation, check smooth engine running. Let's go into that one just as an example. You've got temperature of coolant, it will give you the battery voltage, oil temperature. Some cars, this is very critical in oil temperature because you know then you've got the right amount of oil in the engine. So let's go into that one and press F2. There we go, and it's given me that as well. And you can also press F1, which is the graph, which will come up. So let's say you're driving and you want to see the range of which has gone up by. This will then give you that information. So let's go into Smart Scan, which is where it's going to look for all the modules that it can talk to with the car, which there's 1 of 33. So this will take a couple of minutes. So I'll see you on the flip side. Okay, so here we go. It's come to the end of its automatic scan, and you can see that there's 24 items that the iCarsoft can communicate with this car. Before there was 33. So for those items that aren't showing, it's simply because I don't have it on this variant of vehicle. For example, I don't have the ABC suspension because I wasn't brave enough. I kind of knew that it may give me problems in the future, so I have the normal coils. But if I go into, say, the first one here, one of the functions that I find iCarsoft could really improve on is that, unlike the launch and other diagnostic equipment that I have, it doesn't tell you straight away, once it's done its scan, which items, if any, have any faults on them. You have to go into them. So this is what happens. Let's say the engine control module, let's enter into that. Initializes, communicates, gives me these 4 menus here. You have to then go down into read fault code, wait for it to bring up the information, and it says no fault code found. Great, but I have 3 items, so I'm going to have to go back through that for every single one of those items and do the same thing, and it can be somewhat frustrating. Well, it's 24 items, because you can see as I backed out through there, it's a little bit laggy, and I'm going to have to do that 24 times all the way down. So that's one key thing I don't particularly like about the iCarsoft. Having said that, this is still a real favourite of mine. The launch, when it does its automatic scan, I know will bring up the faults straight away, and you can go straight into them, which is great. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to choose one of these which there's a fault on. I'm not going to clear it. I'm then going to go onto the launch and make sure that it sees the same information. And that would be a nice little test. So transmission, I've been in the first one, there's no faults. Let's go into transmission control. Communicates. Let's go down to read fault code. Oh, there we go. Look, so P2500 is historic, and it's saying that the transmission has an implausible transmission ratio. Now I'm hoping that's just a temporary, because I've moved the shifter a couple of times into neutral whilst driving to test things, and then back into drive. It may have thrown that fault, so not going to clear it. Going to get the launch now, plug her in, and let's see what she has to say and see if it is the same P2500 fault. Handy that it's the same lead. Here we go, let's power on. The launch, as I mentioned before, straight away it has its own internal battery, but it also charges nicely through the OBD2 cable. Let's power on, just hold the button at the top. So the iCarsoft found that there was 24 items that the car could talk to with the iCarsoft. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to run the automatic scan on the launch, and we're going to see if it sees the same number of items, and that will tell me that it's seeing the same information, which is good. So let's talk about, first of all, as soon as you start using this, I've had a few weeks to play with this now and I got quite familiar. It's going to do an automatic VIN scan. Make sure your ignition is on. It will then look for the details of the car, and then the next step it will say automatically, once it's found the VIN, determine the car. So let it do its thing. It can take a few seconds to do this. It's found my VIN, good. It says Mercedes, but it doesn't say specifically the actual model number. So now it's going to say automatic or manual. I first of all thought that was a scan, but it's not. What it is, it's going to automatically choose the car based on the VIN. So I select OK again. For some reason I have to press it twice. Got used to that now. And here we go. It says automatically search, manually select, or special function. Those two there are where you're going to search for the vehicle. If I go into special function, just to show you, before I've even chosen the car, you can actually go into these service features that you can use. It's quite nice actually, because there's a fair bit more. You've got your learning or throttle valve stop. I've recently just done a video, if you have a look below, on how to do the ETC with the iCarsoft. But that's the same thing here for the launch. DPF, diesel particle filter, injection quantity adjustment, etc. So compression test. So it's pretty nice, considering this is pretty much the same price as the iCarsoft, but it's giving you those extra features. So if I go into automatically select, so it sees the VIN and you choose whether it's okay or not, which it is. And then I choose the car, because for me it's a 2004, so it's the middle one. And I press OK once more. So this is where the health report is going to do a full check on the car, and it's going to tell me all the items which has got fault, and it will bring it up at the top, unlike the iCarsoft. The system scan will simply scan for all the systems that the launch can talk to with the car, and the system selection is where you go in manually. So let's say there's the ECM, engine control module, there's the transmission control module. So I could go straight into that now, because I know that was that fault. Was it a P2500 fault? So let's go into transmission control module before we choose the full automatic health report and see what it has to say. So look, all these menus here, iCarsoft only had 4. Here we've got probably about 10. Module information, same as the iCarsoft. Tells you what the device is, it'll tell you what software, what hardware, manufacturing dates, etc. Fault code, self-explanatory, so is clear fault code. Read data stream is going to be live information. We've got actuation tests, because the launch is a bi-directional bit of kit. You can actually open and close doors, for example, if you're in the pneumatics. What it's going to do for the transmission control module, I wouldn't actually know, but if you go into it, it will prompt you through it. Special function, let's go into that and just have a quick look. You've got adaptation, diagnosis routines, initial test oil condition, variant coding. Well, this is probably if you've got another control unit, you can actually take the information from the old, launch will copy it and put the coding onto the new one. And here we go, look, it's got the control unit name, it's got the version, the coding, the part number, and you've got manual input, automatic match and write coding. Quite nice. So let's not go too down deep into those menus, but you can see that there's a fair amount of them compared to what was 4 on the iCarsoft. Right, let's see if that P2500 fault code is there. There it is, P2500, excellent. So it says the transmission has an implausible transmission ratio. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clear the code now, and then importantly, let's see if my iCarsoft also sees it now as the fault is gone. So clear fault. Are you sure you want to clear fault? Yes. Now this is different as well. Launch tells me and prompts me to switch the car on and off. The iCarsoft just seems to clear it without this function. So I'm going to do what it says. I'm using my start stop button because I've got keyless. So let's turn it off. That's it off now. Press OK. Clearing faults. Wait 10 seconds. Okay, do what it says, switch on. So I'm going to switch on. Press OK. Right, so let's see if it's all good. So let's read the fault code and see what it says. There we go. No fault. Brilliant. So that's all cleared. Right, going to get the iCarsoft out now. I'm going to go straight into the manual one because it'll save handed an automatic search. We can very quickly see if that then also shows that there's no fault. So let's do that. And let's plug her in. Right, all plugged in. Good, all done. Right, now this time instead of the smart scan, because it'll take a couple of minutes, I'm going to go in manual, going to go straight to transmission control module. There she is, TCM. Second one down, so let's hit that. Move down into fault codes, and you can see, look, there's only 4 menus compared to the launch, which must have had about 10, including the bi-directional ability. Refault code. Fingers crossed. There's no faults there. There we go, no fault code found. Wicked. So the launch has cleared the faults. The iCarsoft also agrees that there's now no faults. So let's plug in the launch back again, and I'll show you a couple other little fantastic features it can do. So we went into the bottom one there, which was system selection. We got system scan and health report. I'm going to go straight into the health report. This is where it will take probably 2 or 3 minutes, but it's going to show me at a glance all of the items, if any, all of the control units and modules on this vehicle that the launch can first of all A, talk to, and B, if there's faults. With the iCarsoft, you have to manually go through each and every single one. And as you can see, just whilst I'm waiting for this to go through, it's already finding faults here, and it highlights it in red. So SBC, no fault there. ABC, it's not equipped. It tells me it's not equipped, which is something that the iCarsoft wouldn't tell me, but it just wouldn't list it. Electronic stability program, I've got 6 faults on that. I don't seem to remember seeing it on the ESP for my iCarsoft. So I'm going to go into that, and I'm going to have a look and see if the ESP actually is showing the same faults. So straight away, difference on the launch when I do this full scan, automatic scan, is it definitely takes longer, but actually that's a good thing because it's bringing up menus that I didn't see on the iCarsoft. It's bringing up things which it's talking about Japan model, etc. So I think it's being a bit more thorough. So it's a bit annoying that you have to wait about 4 or 5 minutes compared to 2 minutes to do the scan, but nevertheless it's more comprehensive. So we're nearly there. I'm just going to wait for it to do its thing. And just one other point, as it's running through it, as is with the iCarsoft as well, don't get alarmed if there's red warnings coming up in your dash, or it says diagnostic on your command unit, or you hear the vents going. That's usually the last test, or the pump at the back, the PSU, because it's running through these modules and it's going to activate them to work out if there's any faults with your car. So that's all normal. So the one thing that the launch has got compared to my iCarsoft is that it puts this little report together and it shows you all the parts which it says that there's a fault with. It's got the vehicle card. This is great. So if you had this as in a garage, you could actually send this to the customer. You could put your shop information there. It's a professional little report which you can send because this has internet capability. You can simply email it directly from your launch. The iCarsoft, you haven't got that ability. So here's your professional diagnosis report, and you can see that it puts everything in red that it's got a fault with. Engine control module says there's a fault there. Electronic stability program, I've got 6 faults. I don't remember seeing it with the iCarsoft. I got a fault with the SAM on the driver's side, which I think is my horn because the batteries are low. Passenger side, there's also an abnormal fault there. System diagnosis and air conditioning. Right, I'm curious to see why I have and let's have a look at the transmission control module, which we just cleared the fault, and you can see it's normal, so that's good. So the fault stayed away, which tells me that it was probably because whilst driving I shifted into neutral whilst it was in drive because I wanted to check the revs, and then I went back to drive again. A bit risky, but I wanted to test something, and it's probably not like that, and then put the fault on the launch, but importantly that's now clear. Right, let's go into the ESP. You can see that it lists all your DTCs, that's your trouble codes, and it gives you a description. Fault in CAN communication with control unit, N93 central gateway control unit, and that's stored. ESP and there's various there. There's 6. Now, I don't often get too concerned if there's so many faults, because one fault can have a knock-on effect with another fault. So let's go back. Now it brings up this menu which is giving me the option to clear the codes, and it's got all of the codes in one go there, which is nice. So I'm going to now go into the ESP, Electronic Stability Program, and if I close that, it says right, so now I'm going to clear those codes. So let's do what it says. So it's switch on ignition, which it is, because I'm using my start stop, which is the keyless go. Now it's going to tell me to turn it off, probably. All right, here we go. Right now, let's go into clearing fault codes. Why not? Yes. Clearing DTCs. Oh, engine control clear, ESP clear. Also, it's cleared it all in one go. Switch off ignition. Right, I remember I'm using my keyless go, so I'm going to switch it off from here. So press it once. That's the lights off on the dash. So there's no lights now showing on my dash. Okay, press OK. It says the menus are clearing. Give it 10 seconds. Switch on ignition. So I'm going to press the button here. There you go, that's the ignition on just before you crank the engine. And let's press OK because we turned on the ignition. I can hear the vents going on my air conditioning unit, so it's doing a little test just to see. So this is good. This is actually not just clearing the ESP, it's clearing all of those faults in a oneer. That's something that I can't do very well with my iCarsoft. So at the moment, this is pretty much winning here. There we go. Clear fault memory is now complete. Okay, lastly, so we've done the health report, we've done the system selection, we've got a system scan here. And it tells you to switch on the ignition, etc. So this here is going to run through all of the items that the car can talk to in the similar way that it does the health report, but it's just going to bring up all of the items that are communicative with the launch to the particular car that you're using. Now you get the same information actually on the health report. So this one I find a little bit sort of odd of why they've put this menu in here. If I go back in the session, yes. So if you do want to go straight to, say, the transmission control module, then just use the system selection. You don't have to wait for it to do the whole scan. It's got it all there, and that's really handy. In the same way, actually, the iCarsoft has exactly the same function. It saves a lot of waiting around. On the launch, when it does its system scan to find it automatically, it can take like 4 or 5 minutes. The iCarsoft, probably half the time. So this is probably using a few more menus, and it's probably taking a little bit longer because of that, because it's going a little bit deeper is the way that I look at it. But you know, importantly, these both work really, really well. I think the launch has the upper hand, mind you, but then it's a newer unit. I've had this for about 5 years. So let's go and have a little think, and I'll show you what I believe is my pros and cons for both of these units, and which one, if I had a choice again, I didn't have any, I'd probably think about buying. So iCarsoft and Launch, they are pretty decent bits of kit, both very, very close to one another. But I'm going to give you an honest review what I think if I had to buy these from you and I didn't have them, which one would I actually go for now that I've done the review. And I've forgotten what I was going to say. God, it must be, that's a Gen X thing, isn't it? How come I know every single word to Ice Ice Baby and Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock, It Takes Two. And for that matter, I also know every single word to The Littlest Hobo, but that's a whole different thing. And yet, when I'm trying to remember, it's an age thing. When I used the Launch first time, I found it was a little bit kind of, wasn't too sure with the menus. But then I stopped and thought about it, because when I used the iCarsoft for the first time, about 5 years ago, I had the same thing. I was like, oh, what does this menu do? And I didn't quite know what I was doing. And I think that's all it is. It's just a bit of familiarity. You just really kind of need to, you know, get into it and use it. I wouldn't worry too much about reading the instructions. Just plug and play and start pressing buttons. As I said, be careful though, because it is bi-directional, meaning you can go and change physical things on the ECUs on the cars. So it will give you a warning, but just bear that in mind, that if you don't quite know what you're doing, then perhaps stop and back out that menu. The reason it's good bi-directional is simply that if you are looking at something like the seat, for example, and you want to test it because you're not too sure whether it could be the button on the door which controls the seat, what this is going to be able to do for you is actually go into that control unit for the seat. It's then going to be able to do the function, so move the seat forwards and backwards, up and down. If you've got things like the inflated lumbar support, it will do that too. And in fact, I don't know what happened, but when I was clearing the codes just now, that was the first time I've ever had my lumbar support working in the Mercedes. Well, it worked on the passenger side anyway. I couldn't believe it. I heard this noise, I thought, what on earth is that? And I could see the seat inflating, and it was doing its thing. And originally when I bought the car, there's a little pipe underneath. They're quite an old car now, and it ends up having a hole in it. I replaced that pipe, and I thought it would then start working again. But when I had the iCarsoft, even though the item came up on the seat for the lumbar support, it wasn't able to kind of really do anything. This though does allow you to carry out a test. Other things I really like about it is it's touchscreen, so you don't have to navigate using the controls and the buttons. That's a nice little touch. It's also an Android setup, so if you want to, you can go on the net, you can check a code, or you can just use your phone. But nevertheless, it's basically like a little tablet. So that's a really nice idea on that too. It's got its own power. This one doesn't. This one has to be powered by the OBD cable. This one you charge up and use it. It also is powered by the OBD2 cable if you've forgotten to charge it, which is good as well. Let's talk about menus. So the menus on it are very similar. They've got those three main menus. So when you start it up, you have a choice on whether you want to do a full scan. On the launch, oh, it's beeping at me. On the launch is called a health report, and it will run through everything that it can talk to with the car, and it will give you back anything which is an anomaly, any faults that it finds. It would also list all those faults, and you can go into it and you can see, right, I've got 3 faults with the engine control unit, and it will say what those are. It will give you the DTCs. You can then look them up. You can then clear the codes, and hopefully they'll go away. If they don't, then obviously you've got a hardware issue that you need to fix. The iCarsoft does bring up the codes, but it doesn't do it in quite the same level and detail. So it'll do the same initial review where it'll run through. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes, and it will tell you what control unit you can see with the car in the same way and what the faults are. There's also another menu that both of these have, which is where I think the iCarsoft calls it a manual menu, and the launch was actually more of a component menu, but nevertheless it does the same thing. And what it actually does is it allows you to go directly to that individual item that you got a problem with. So let's say it was a problem with the engine control unit. You can go into the engine control unit, you can go straight to have a look and see if there's any trouble codes. You can clear it. Saves a bit of time, because it can be a bit frustrating when you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs because it's taking 2 or 3 minutes to run the full system scan. But just remember that both have a manual setup where you can go in individually, but it will bring up all of the control units for all the different variants or models. So if your car is a slightly lower model and it hasn't got the high-end spec, say for example it hasn't got heated seats, it's going to bring up the heated seat menu, but it will then warn you and say that this vehicle is not fitted with that particular function. So just bear that in mind. It's going to bring up a lot more than your car will actually have. The launch had another menu though, which was special functions, and that had a whole load of stuff inside it. When you went into it in that detail, you could really have a look and go deep down. You could look at the software version, you could look at what the manufacturer date was that it was made, what the manufacturing part number is. That's really handy. So let's say you got a control unit, for example, you want to know what the amplifier is. So I've done a video, it's down below, if you want to know how to fix the Mercedes amplifier. But to get to it, it's a bit of a ball ache and it's going to take you maybe an hour. That's going to tell you what the part number is for your amplifier, whether you got any issues on it, and then you can look at going to get a replacement part without having to lift any panels off the vehicle. So I think summary wise, the launch just tips the balance just because of the functionality of what it can do. What would really be the icing on the cake though is if they did the launch that came with, say, half a dozen, well not even that, maybe just 4 different cars for a price. I know you can download it, but by the time you spend, say, if you had to download for 2 different cars, so that's say another 90 quid, plus the cost of the unit, you're looking at about £240, whereas you can buy a 10 car unit of one of these for about maybe £180. maybe £200. So yeah, they are very, very close. But as I said, I think the bi-directional ability on this, and the fact that it's touchscreen as well, and the fact that it has its own power, and the more I get to play with this, the more functions I'm finding. Yeah, it's really pretty good. So if you've only got one car, yeah, go for the launch. If you've got a couple of cars, still consider the launch, but just remember that you're going to have to download and pay money, maybe 40-50 quid for that other vehicle that you've got. So look, I hope you found that useful. They're both very, very capable. I wouldn't worry too much if you bought one and you haven't got the other, because they're both very, very good. It's just if I had a choice, that's what my opinion would be. And the nice thing is, look how small they are. So if you want to go around and help somebody out, I can stick them in the same case. If one doesn't work, then I know I've got the other one. And I can go and diagnose cars, and I can go and help people out, help my neighbours. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Helping people in the world. Well, it is for me, hence why I do this channel. There's loads more that these can do, and if there is something that specifically that you want me to have a look at, let me know down below, and I'll do my very best to come back to you. And if you want to be a member, then I'll always come back to you. I'll make sure that I give you detailed responses, and I give it to you in a really sharp, timely manner as well. So these members are coming up just here, and of course if you are a member, then you'll get priority in my responses. And that just leaves for me to say one thing, and that is stop, collaborate and listen. Ike's back with a brand new invention.